This is hawashi, one of the best street foods in the entire world, but I'll bet you don't know it. It is meat cooked in bread so it absorbs all the juices and just grilled to perfection. Served with fries and pickles, this is unbeatable. Every time I go to Egypt, I have to eat so many of them because they're packed full of flavour, and the great thing is they're super easy to make at home.
So first up, we need to turn this lamb mince into kofta mix, and to do that we're going to prepare some vegetables and add them into the meat and season it. And it really couldn't be simpler to make this hawashi mixture. Peel 1 medium onion or 2 small ones for every 500 grams of meat that you're using, and then roughly chop them into chunks. You're going to mince these fine in a food processor later, and alongside them you'll want a spicy green chilli. I'm going to be doubling up this recipe, and this time I decided to reduce the spiciness by removing the seeds and core. Set those aside, then prep a tomato by shredding it into tiny pieces with a grater. That's going to release loads of liquid which we don't want to include in the mixture, so add the tomato pieces to a sieve and let them drain off. You don't want to dry this out, it's just to drain the excess liquid while you process the onion and chilli. So into a food processor or blender, add the onion and chilli pieces and blend them together until they're finely chopped. You also want to add 2 garlic cloves at some point, and so put those in and pulse until your eyes inevitably sting and burn. Pro tip, do your real emotional crying when you're doing this so no one suspects a thing. To turn that into hawashi, you're obviously going to need some meat, and I'm using 500 grams of lamb mince with about 20% fat. Beef is the usual choice for hawashi, but just make sure whatever mince you're using has plenty of fat. Then just add the onion, chilli and garlic mixture to the meat in a large bowl that you can mix in. Here's the tomatoes which I minced. They're quite moist at this point but not soaking wet. Those get added to the meat as well. The last thing you add is the spices, and these are simply 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and then take a nutmeg and grate in a good amount, about 1/16 of a teaspoon. And that's it, you just need to mix this all together. I always do this by hand because it's the easiest way to get it evenly mixed, and just give it a brief kneading motion to fold everything into the meat. After about 3 minutes it will look something like this, and if you're used to making kofta or meatballs, it's going to feel really wet in comparison. That's completely normal. The secret to these sandwiches is the moisture, and as long as it can be shaped into a ball without collapsing, it's good to go.
And now that we've finished mixing this, it needs to rest for about half an hour so it can firm up. So I'm going to cover it, and then afterwards we're going to come back and we're going to stuff it into the pieces of bread. So this is traditional Egyptian bread that we use to make hawashi. It's basically like pitta, except it's got a lot of rusk on the bottom and it's kind of like a sourdough. Now, the interesting thing is the texture of this dough on the inside, because it grabs onto the meat. I'll heat it up and show you. Now obviously you might not be able to get this bread, and if that's the case you can just use regular pitta instead. We use this all the time because it's so easily available. You just cut it in half and then stuff it and it makes a perfect pocket.
You'll need about 4 to 5 loaves of pitta, and to make them easier to work with, you can heat them up in the microwave for a minute which will soften them. If your pitta is oval shaped, slice them in half and then pry the 2 sides open so you're left with a pocket. Be gentle doing this so they don't tear too much. You can also open them from the side so it's wide open like this, and this is what you'd do if you're using circular pitta. Some of them will end up tearing, but you can still use them as long as there is still some sort of pocket. Then all that's left is to stuff them, and this is stupidly simple to do. Grab a ball of the raw meat mixture and push it right to the back, then spread it out by squishing the bread. Press it into an even thickness all around, and then go back and fill any gaps. Obviously the ones that are wide open are easier to fill. These look pretty good, and you can see how the meat glues the bread together and seals any cracks. Personally, I prefer my hawashi to be stuffed a little thick with about 1.5 centimeters of meat, but Salma prefers them thinner at under a centimeter. I'm convinced the thick ones are juicier, but let me know what you think. And if you're thinking, hey Obi, you just use raw meat in bread, that's dangerous. It would be if we weren't going to cook it, but we will, duh. What's truly dangerous is adding cheese to your hawashi, especially something stretchy. Don't try this at home, you've been warned. So right after stuffing, you need to cook these so the bread doesn't absorb moisture and dissolve. But before that, take some vegetable oil and generously rub it all over the bread on both sides. This will help the bread brown and absorb heat as it cooks. If you're going to be cooking these in the oven, you want to wrap the oiled hawashi in parchment paper to trap in the juices as it bakes. Put these on a tray and bake them at 200 degrees Celsius for 45 minutes and flip them halfway through. It takes long, but this is the way to go if you're making these in bulk. If you have a large griddle or you're doing just a few pieces, it's going to be easier to pan fry them. Place them in a non-stick pan over medium heat with any crack sides facing down and let them cook for 3 minutes. When they're up they should be a little firm, so flip them onto the second side. If it's looking a bit dry, brush them with some oil then wait 3 minutes. By now the meat juices will start to run and boil, which will help it brown. This time around you'll flip them and wait for 2 more minutes, and you can press down lightly with a spatula to get better browning. On this last flip there should be some good colour. Just give this last side 2 more minutes and I think we're done. And here's proof for all the doubters and hypochondriacs out there. 80 degrees is more than cooked through. These are looking good. Bread is moist yet crispy and the meat is juicy. And the oven ones also look fantastic. They browned really evenly. You gotta serve these right away, so plate them up with some salty Middle Eastern style pickles and a big pile of fries. You're gonna be shocked how juicy and flavourful these are, and get a load of that incredible cheese pull.
Alright, let's dig right in. This is just too good of a sandwich. It's really meaty, the bread is soft yet crispy at the same time, and those pickles and fries, oh, they're the perfect accompaniment. And don't even get me started on these cheese ones. I'm gonna go ahead and guarantee that if you make these, they're gonna be your new favorite food as well. Don't say I didn't warn you.